Hello everyone! Today I am going to talk about a French car brand, and if you read the title, you saw it was about Alpine. If you clicked on this video to learn about the brand Alpina, I'm sorry, it's not the right car brand. So, today I will talk about the life, the death, and the revival of Alpine. The whole story starts with a person named Jean Rédolé. In 1922, Jean Rédolé was born. His dad has a Renault dealership. He studied in Normandy and got his high school diploma during World War II. Then, he went to a university in Paris to study economics and graduated in 1946. He became the owner of his dad's Renault dealership. In 1950, Jean Rédolé gets into racing. The reason is for promotional purposes. Because, as he said, racing is the best benchmark for any production car, and a win is the best marketing point. The car he chose to race with was the Renault 4CV, not just any 4CV, the 1063. Basically the racing version of the 4CV. Jean Rédolé analyzed the 4CV and realized that she could be undefeated if she was just lighter. So he went to see an Italian dude called Giovanni Michelotti to order a lighter version of the 4CV. Jean Rédolé won quite a lot of races, and a lot of them were in the Alps. This is why he ultimately decided to call the brand Alpine. He saw quite a potential of making an automotive brand with simple yet competitive engines and lightweight cars. His stepfather helped him financially to start the brand, and in 1955, SAA, Société des Automobiles Alpines, is created, and its first car is the Alpine A106. The A in the name stands for Alpine, and the 106 is in reference of the 4CV. Because the A106 shares a lot of parts with the Renault. Basically, the idea behind this car is lightweight cars are the best sports cars. So even though the A106 had 21 horsepower, it isn't very powerful, but it only weighed 500 kilograms. What is also impressive is that the 4CV is actually 600 kilograms, so it's impressive that they managed to remove 100 kilograms from it. Also, another cool thing on this car is that you can have a 5-speed manual transmission, which was very uncommon at this time, but it was way more expensive than the other option, which was a 3-speed manual. The first 3 A106 produced were blue, white, and red. It was of course to represent the national flag of Zimbabwe. There wasn't a lot produced. In fact, there is more Ferrari Enzos than an A106. Then, in 1958, a new car was launched under the name Alpine, the A108. This time, this car wasn't based off the 4CV, but on a new Renault, the Renault Dauphine. The A108 has the engine of the Gordoni version of the Renault Dauphine, basically the sports version. It was quite an upgrade compared to the 4CV's 21 horsepower, since the new engine made 49 horsepower. There were multiple gearboxes available on it. However, the best one remained, like the A106, the 5-speed gearbox. With this car you could get two body styles, the coupe version or the soft top version. And during my research, I was surprised to find that there was a Brazilian version of this car, and it was named the Willys Interlagos. It got quite a decent success over there, with around 822 Interlagos produced. It is a good car, but still not a great success. But it still sold better than the A106. It sold at 2,322 cars. But a new car was soon to be released. This car would get Alpine from small car manufacturer to well-known car brand. And this car is named the A110. This time, this car shared a lot of parts with the Renault 8. The A110 is such a beauty. It is incredibly pretty. It got to get multiple different engines. And there is also no more 3-speed gearboxes. Now the default one is a 4-speed gearbox. This car is not well known only because of its engine or the gearbox or the body, but it is known for being an incredible rally machine. For example, in 1973 at the Monte Carlo Rally, on the podium there was only 3 Alpine A110s. They had beaten the Ford Escort RS1600, the Datsun 240Z, and Lancia with their Fulvia Coupe HF. When an A110 arrived, you know that the winner will most likely be the Alpine. It won the rally years of 1971, 1972, and 1973. It is an absolute beast, but it wasn't because of the horsepower it had, it is because of how agile the car is. The agility of this car is due to the incredible suspensions, the incredible chassis, and how lightweight the car is. To make it lighter, they decided to make the body of the Alpine A110 with glass fiber. Most of the Alpine A110s produced were around 680 kilograms. The Alpine is recognized as an incredible racing machine, but it is quite a rough car, very stiff and requires a certain driving ability. So someone that doesn't races wouldn't buy one, and Alpine needs to sell cars to live. So Alpine made a new model, which is called the A310. The A310 was first introduced at the Geneva International Motor Show. The car was sharper than the A110. The A310 is meant to be more comfortable and easier to handle than the A110. The first buyers had mixed reviews about the A310, especially considering quality issues. It got fixed later, but the reputation of this car was still stained. Another issue is that compared to its older sister, the A310 was heavier, but had the same horsepower as the current A110. The weight difference played a lot in the car's sales. The 4-cylinder version only sold at 2,318 cars. In 1973, Renault becomes the biggest shareholder of Alpine, so basically Renault owns Alpine. Another thing that didn't help Alpine was the first oil crisis. It's a good thing that Renault bought Alpine, otherwise it would have disappeared. And so it was not selling well. The A310 was not going well at all, until a new engine arrived. In 1976, it was called the V6 PRV. PRV for Peugeot, Renault, Volvo. Then they stopped making the inline-4 version because, well, it was not selling well, it was like a catastrophe. The V6 was a breath of fresh air for the coupe. Now it had 150 horsepower, and this version got pretty popular, well, for Alpine scale. It sold in total at 9,166 cars, which is way better than the inline-4 version's number. Also, a fun fact, in the 1970s, the A110 was used as a police car by the French police, especially by the Rapid Intervention Unit, and in 1974, the A110s were replaced by A310s. In 1976, Renault introduced a new car made by Alpine, the Renault 5 Alpine. Since the market for small sports car was booming, it led to the creation of this car. However, there was a huge issue. The car was only 93 horsepower. So, in 1982, they decided to add a turbo to the R5 Alpine, which made the F5 Alpine Turbo. Instead of being stuck at 93 horsepower, it was now 110 horsepower, which is pretty nice. Now, let's go back to the 70s. In 1977, the Alpine A110 was stopped being produced. At least it lasted 15 years in production, which is a pretty nice time. But something more sad happened a year later. Jean Redoulet decides to leave the company, as he felt like he wasn't the one leading the company anymore. So the company went forward without him. Another issue started to appear. As the 80s started approaching, the A310 started aging. So of course, Alpine was gonna make a new car. And this car is the Alpine GTA. The name GTA comes from Gran Turismo Alpine and not Grand Theft Auto. And this car will only be available with a V6. The production of the A310 was stopped in 1984 and the production of the GTA started the same year. Of course, the engine of this car was still the V6 PRV. And to save money, Renault reused a lot of parts from other Renaults. The engineers that worked on the GTA were fighting the biggest issue on this car, the weight distribution, simply because the majority of the weight is at the rear of the car, where the engine is, and a V6 PRV is pretty big. This issue is why the car can be difficult to handle. A year later, a new version of the GTA appeared. The version was called the V6 Turbo. This new engine is smaller than the previous one. The naturally aspirated one is 2.8 liters, but the turbo engine is 2.5 liters. But it gained 40 horsepower compared to the naturally aspirated one. However, a weird thing is that the GTA Turbo is heavier than the naturally aspirated one. I don't know how, it somehow happened. During the 80s, Renault was ambitious. They wanted to get to the USA market. Renault tried for for years to have success on the US market, but it never caught on. So Renault tried again, this time by buying AMC. Renault either rebadged or simply renamed some of their cars to be sold on the United States ground. So it led to the creation of some weird version of French cars, like the Renault Le Car, which is basically a more muscular version of the Renault 5, or the Renault Alliance, which is a depressed-looking Renault 9. So what does this have to do with Alpine? Well, of course, Renault wanted to put the Alpine GTA in the USA. They decided to redesign a bit the GTA for the US market, so they added an incredible feature, pop-up headlights. Renault wanted to sell 2,500 GTAs in a year in the US, but before it could be sold, Renault pulled the plug on the project. The reason they pulled the plug is because Renault was having a difficult time financially, and the CEO got straight up murdered, so the US version of the GTA only had 21 cars produced, which makes them incredibly rare. 2 of them were kept by Alpine, 12 cars were sold to lucky buyers, and a few were used as a testing car for the next Alpine car, which I'm gonna talk about later. The GTA USA is so rare that even the racing version of the GTA, which is the Europa Cup GTA, isn't as rare. There was also other special editions of the Alpine GTA, such as the V6 Turbo Mil, which was made for the 35th anniversary of Alpine. The main difference is that you have a red car and all mentions of Renault is removed. And of course, after a few years, the Alpine GTA was stopped being produced in 1991. And of course Renault decided to make a new car, and this car's name is the A610. And there was a massive issue during the development of this car. Renault didn't give enough budget. They reused the windows of the GTA, which is why the A610 and the GTA look very similar. But something good happened. Pop-up headlights. I really love pop-up headlights, so this is why the A610 is my favorite Alpine. It's really because of that. It also got a more pronounced wing compared to the GTA, and the bumper was changed. And of course, it still has the V6 PRV turbo. Also, the weight distribution is a bit better because there is more weight in the front of the car. It had great potential despite budget cuts, however, a major issue killed it. And this issue is the price tag. It was way too expensive while being similar to the GTA. Renault was lacking interest into saving Alpine. They weren't putting too much efforts to save the brand. They wanted to make a more powerful version, but it was too expensive to make. And sadly, this car was a hard commercial failure. Only 818 cars produced. The production of the A610 was stopped in 1995, and the same year, Alpine disappeared. Renault created Renault Sport and lost interest in Alpine, and thus, Alpine disappeared for years and years and years and years. But in 2006, a French journal announced that Renault was planning on making a high-end cars, so Alpine might be reborn. And no info after that. The years go by, and 2012 arrives. The name Alpine is back, and the name was put on a concept car called the Renault Alpine A110-50. This concept was made to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of Alpine, and it is, well, not to everyone's taste. I personally find it absolutely ugly. It is atrocious, especially the back. I really hate the back. But there was a hype, because Alpine may come back, and later in the year they confirmed that yes, Alpine will be back, but it will be back only in 2016. Renault started using the name Alpine in motorsports, like in 24 Le Mans. In early 2016, a new Alpine concept car was shown, and this time it was actually pretty. It is called the Alpine Vision, and this peculiar concept is actually very interesting, as it closely resembles the production car that Alpine released a year later. And in 2017, the new Alpine A110 was released, and I love this car. It is so beautiful. I'm in love with this car. I really love it. I really love how it pays homage to the original design while being modern looking. Just like the original car, this one also has a 4-cylinder, but unlike the original, this one has a turbo. This tiny 1.8 liter engine makes 250 horsepower, and it is very light for a modern sports car. However, the major flaw with this car is that there is no manual transmission, but at least it is a very good gearbox. It is quick and you can choose the gear. The engine is still in the back, and it is still rear-wheel drive. It is very agile and people love it. There is some cheap parts here and there, but people who review it agree it is an incredible sports car, even for 70,000 euros. 2 new versions also appeared later, the A110 GT and the A110S. So the base A110 is the entry level, the A110S is is the high-end one, and the GT is a compromise between the base A110 and the A110S. The A110S has a harder chassis and a beefier engine compared to the entry level, and the GT has the same engine as the A110S but has the chassis of the base model. And Alpine was not finished with all those different versions of the A110. In 2023, a new version was released, the Alpine A110R, and the R stands for radical. It has the same engine as the A110S. However, the suspension is stiffer and it has carbon wheels, carbon hood, carbon wing, etc. It is the best Alpine A110 you can get, and it looks very cool. But being cool looking comes with a price tag, and the price tag is 100,000 euros. It is really an incredible homage to other cars. Is Renault coming back to its roots? No. The new Renault 5 that everyone seems to like, I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I find it so ugly. It doesn't pay homage to the car. You just have the name put on it, it's like, hey look, it kinda resembles the car. I hate minimalism. Like, please Renault, I beg you, put details on cars again. Just to get back on Alpine, there's something interesting that Renault did. They decided to make Esprit Alpine version on their cars, like the very Alpine cars, like a 1.6 ton hybrid SUV. It's exactly what I thought Alpine was like. Yeah, why make light sports car when you can make heavy, unusable cars? What makes me angry is that they use the name of all the cars only for a selling point, not by passion. The Esprit Alpine SUV is already pretty bad, but you know what shows that they really don't care? They threw away their almost new old cars to the junkyard to make space. Like, even if they can't go on the public roads, at least give it to a museum. There's tons of car museums in France. The fact they just threw it away shows how much they care about their older cars. And there is proof that it's them that threw it away. Like a Renault 9 GTS with an automatic gearbox. It was never produced with an automatic gearbox, only a prototype. A Renault Logan, they are sold as Dacia in France. A Samsung SM7, it was never even sold in France, and all of them also had very low mileage. And people, like myself, were pissed because L'Aventure Peugeot and Citroën sell their cars where there's too many. Renault said that they threw them away because those cars weren't allowed to go on public roads, as they were never homologated. Like Renault. Are you actually acting like you aren't a multinational company? And another excuse that they threw at us was, but at least the parts can be used to save road-going cars. Ah yes, common cars like the Samsung SM7, a very common car in Europe. And I am very infuriated because in France they keep making ads like, oh, we love our old cars so much, and then they do this. Like, come on Renault. And one of the saddest cars that was thrown away is the Scenic RX-4. Only 40,000 were produced of this car. It seems like that the future for Alpine is not very promising. Alright, it is the end of the video. I'm sorry for the rant at the end of the video. It's because I'm angry at Renault. I hope you enjoyed the video. It took quite a long time to make it, especially in terms of recording, because I took a long time to record because I kept having a stuffy nose and also got busy with school. Alright, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out this picture of a totally random Renault 5. Goodbye!